कुछ no second semester का हेलो
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
हाँ बंद करो let us start हेलो आवाज जा रही है
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
आ रही है.
ठीक है शुरू करते हैं we have been discussing romantic poetry for 2 or 3 classes. In the last class, we discussed the characteristics of neoclassical poetry. We discussed the special features of neoclassical poetry. I have told you that neoclassicism is the third-hand classicism in 18th century. Firstly, it was in Greece, then it came to Italy, Rome, and later on it came to England. So this classicism is third-hand classicism and it is known as neoclassicism. I have told you classical works means the work having balance between theme and style, and both should be of super level. The theme should be good and style should be dignified. But in the neoclassical poetry or in the 18th century poetry known as neoclassical poetry, there is something different. Actually, 18th century writers wanted to imitate the Greek writers, the Roman writers, and they wanted to write epic. They were influenced by the classical writers, whether they are from Greece or whether they are from Rome. But you must know one thing, that they imitated their style. They did not become successful in imitating the theme. So their style became dignified or elevated, but the theme remained of low level, trivial. Neoclassical poetry. Now, I have told you in the last class that 18th century poetry, or that is neoclassical poetry, is the poetry of city life, is the poetry of town, is the poetry of aristocratic family. And neoclassical poetry is dominated by the region. The intellect dominates over the neoclassical poetry. Much more importance is given to region in neoclassical poetry. So the most important role in the 18th century poetry known as neoclassical poetry is the role of intellect, is the role of uh, region, and 18th century poetry was written within four walls. Within four walls, the people in 18th century did not like to go to the rural areas. They remain confined to the city. They remain confined to the town. So their poetry was written within four walls, living in the room, and they were not able to go out of the city, so they were not able to see the natural things. The uh, they were they used to see only the artificial things. So in 18th century, the theme of poetry was trivial. They did not write on natural things, rather they used to write on artificial things, on truthful things. Something, for example, there was peculiar type of dress of some person. People started, poets started writing poetry on their hairstyle, on their dress style, on their mustache style, on their beard style. So these were not taken to be the serious subject matter of writing poetry. So 18th century poetry, the theme of 18th century poetry was trivial, but they were presented in a very much dignified style. So their style was grand, but the theme was not grand. If the theme had been grand and the style had been grand, both had been grand, then they would be they would succeed in writing, in composing epic. But the style is dignified, but their theme is trivial, so it is called mock epic, false epic, and it is a poetry of London city, and it is poetry of urbanization. It is the poetry of restaurant, clubs, hotels. Those were the gathering places where they used to gossip, where they used to have talk to each other, and that was the hub for composing poetry. So in 18th century, the poetry is dominated by the region. The second characteristics of neoclassical poetry is that it is poetry of city life. It it presents the picture of aristocratic people, and it has a tight-knit structure because 18th century poetry is based on rules and regulations. It was 18th century poetry which was based on rules and regulations, and the fashion of writing poetry in 18th century was heroic couplet. In Hindi it is called doha. For example, the doha of Kabir Das, the doha of Rahim. So doha, couplet means doha. They used to write, and for example, Dryden has written MacFlecknoe, and the first line of MacFlecknoe is, all human things are subject to decay, and Bhet summons monarch must obey. Heroic couplet means two lines of iambic pentameter rhyming together are called heroic couplet. So the fashion of writing poetry in the form of heroic couplet was in vogue in 18th century. Another thing is that its approach was objective. Its approach was objective. How do we measure? The question arises, how do we say that 18th century is the poetry of city life, is the poetry of town life? The answer is quite clear. We find the picture of restaurant. Restaurant is not available in the rural area, in the village area. Restaurant is available in the town, in the city, and clubs, hotels, tea stalls. All these things were present in the city, not in the village. So 18th century poetry is the poetry of city life, and it also presents the picture of aristocratic people. 18th century never presents the picture of common people. No, people of low class, people of a village area. 18th century poetry always presents the picture of aristocratic people, aristocratic life. So it is a poetry of town, it is a poetry of city. From language point of view, if we judge 18th century poetry, then we find that 18th century is 18th century poetry is prosaic, not poetic. Though it was poetry, but its language is prosaic. The question is, why is so? Because 18th century writers wanted clarity in their writing. I have taught you in the beginning classes that there is a great difference between prose and poetry. In poetry, we find the maximum meaning in minimum words. In poetry, words are a few, but meaning is deeper and deeper. Just opposite to this, in prose, meaning is very little, though the language is minimum meaning in maximum words. Words are many, but the meaning is very little. So this is the basic difference between prose and poetry. And 18th century poetry is prosaic, though it is poetry, because 18th century writers wanted clarity, and clarity is not possible in poetry. It is possible in prosaic language. Another thing is that artificiality is seen in the 18th century poetry. No naturalness is found in 18th century poetry. So these are the characteristics. Another thing is that 18th century poetry is always objective. Their approach is objective, never subjective. So these are the characteristics of 18th century poetry. Now we come to the poetry of 19th century. I have told you that the opposite word of classicism is romanticism, and all the writers of 18th century are called neoclassical writers, whereas 18th century, against 18th century came the 19th century poetry, because people were very much disgusted with the narrowness of the style of 18th century poetry. They wanted freedom. They wanted to lead a free life. They wanted to write free. They wanted to express their emotions and feeling in the poetry, but they were not able to express their emotions and feelings. They were not able to express their ideas as much as they wanted to express in the form of poetry. Because the fashion of writing poetry in 18th century was heroic couplet, and heroic couplet is a stanza of 2 lines. So they wanted to express their emotions and feelings much more, but it was not possible for this structure to accommodate their ideas a lot. Therefore, the rules were broken, and they took the help of imagination, and the term of 18th century poetry was given romantic poetry, romantic revival. I have told you so many times that in all the ages, less and more, in a modified style, classicism came, romanticism went, romanticism came, classicism went, but their nomenclature were changed. Some modifications were made in that very thing, but basically there are 2 terms which came and went, and they were classicism and romanticism. Before, up to Renaissance, the age was known less or more classical. After this, up to 1660, the age is known as classical and romantic. And after 1660 up to 18th century, the whole 18th century is known as classicism. And after this, up to 1890, the age is known as romantic age. And after that, again, with T.S. Eliot, classical age starts. So, less and more, these 2 things always came and went, though some modifications were made in different ages. But basically 2 terms came and went, that is classicism and romanticism. So, the seed of romantic poetry has been sown by William Blake in the beginning of, by the end of 18th century. Thomas Gray, William Cowper, that is known as William Cowper, and A.C. Swinburne. These were called pre-romantic poets. And later on, this seed sprouted and started growing, and gradually it took the shape of a tree of romantic age in 18th century, in the first half of 18th century. You should know one thing, that this age is known as romantic revival. Now the question is, why do a suffix came after the word romantic? In neoclassicism there was prefix, that is neo. Neo means new. Now there is suffix known as revival, which came after the word romantic, known as romantic revival. I have told you that romantic age had already come in the 16th century. We find romantic elements in the poetry of William Shakespeare. Nature is there, imagination is there. So, and again, it remained silent for so many years. And again it was revived by the 19th century writers. So again it came into existence in the half part of 19th century. So this is known as Romantic revival. Romantic age was again revived, again came into existence. Therefore, this is called Romantic revival. Simply you should know that Romantic age came in the 19th century against the Neoclassical age. Against the Neoclassical age. Now make comparison between the Neoclassical poetry and Romantic poetry. I have thrown light on the characteristics of Neoclassical poetry. Just opposite to these, we find the characteristics in the Romantic poetry. I have told you that Neoclassical poetry is dominated by the region. Realism is found in the Neoclassical poetry. Means reality is found there. Reality cannot be discarded. Whereas in Romantic poetry, imagination plays very important role. In Neoclassical poetry, region played very important role. Whereas in Romantic poetry, imagination dominates over region. Played a very important role in Romantic poetry. Simply you may say that Neoclassical poetry is the poetry of region, whereas Romantic poetry is the poetry of imagination. The second characteristics of Neoclassical poetry is that Neoclassical poetry is based on rules and regulations, whereas in Romantic poetry, the rules and regulations have been broken. In Neoclassical poetry, we find tight, neat structure, whereas in Romantic poetry, we find loose structure. And the fashion of writing poetry in 18th century was heroic couplet, whereas in Romantic poetry, the fashion of writing poetry was ballad, was tarja rima, otaiva rima, means a stanza of 8 lines, a stanza of 14 lines, a stanza of 4 lines, because Romantic poets used to fly in the world of imagination. They were completely away from the world of reality. They started to fly like a bird in the world of imagination. So the fashion of writing poetry in the 19th century poetry was a stanza of 4 lines, a stanza of 8 lines, which is known as otaiva rima, a stanza of tarja rims. So the fashion of writing poetry in 18th century is different from the writing of 18th century. Another thing is that 18th century is the poetry of city life, whereas Romantic poetry is the poetry of village lives. Village lives, because in neoclassical poetry, we used to find the picture of clubs, hotels, restaurants, tea stalls, whereas in romantic poetry we find the pictures of mountains, hills, seas, stars, all these things, natural things. So naturalness is found in 19th century poetry, whereas artificiality is found in the neoclassical poetry. And this is the reason why, actually I have told you that the 18th century poetry was written within four walls, whereas the 19th century poetry was written out of the town. People used to move, to wander about here and there in the village, on the mountain, on the bank of the sea, on the bank of the rivers. You must have read a very beautiful poem by William Wordsworth, The Daffodils. The Daffodils. Wordsworth writes, I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering, dancing in the breeze. So this is the first stanza of the poem, The Daffodils, which presents the very beautiful picture of the natural things. Jungle is there. William Wordsworth is wandering about here and there in the valley of Grasmere, where he finds a lake. On the bank of the lake, there are so many trees. Within those trees, there are so many plants of the daffodils, numberless. There is not possible to count the number of the daffodils, and the wind is blowing, touching the branches of the daffodils. So the poet tells, I wander lonely as a cloud. He talks of cloud, which is a natural thing. I wandered alone as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills. Vales mean valley, hills, these are the natural things. Besides, when all at once I saw a crowd, host of golden daffodils. Daffodils are also natural things. Beside the lake is also a natural thing. Beside the lake, beneath the trees are also natural things. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering, dancing in the breeze. Breeze means mild wind. हल्की हल्की हवा जो चलती. So all these things present the very beautiful picture of natural things. And river is not found in the city, mountain is not found in the city, the stars are not found in the city, the trees are not found in the city. Natural tree, by tree I mean natural tree, not man-made tree, man-planted tree. So these things make clear that 18th and 19th century poetry or romantic poetry is the poetry of village life, is the poetry of nature. Nature plays very important role in the romantic poetry. So romantic neoclassical poetry is the poetry of city life, whereas romantic poetry is the poetry of village life. We find the picture of restaurants, hotels, clubs in the neoclassical poetry, whereas we find the pictures of stars, clouds, seas, rivers, mountains, plateau, valleys, hills in the romantic poetry. And this make makes clear that nature is very important in romantic poetry. Another thing is that in romantic poetry, we find the naturalness. Its approach is subjective. It always talks of subjectivity, not objectivity. Anything is expressed in a direct manner. So its approach is subjective. Now, other than these things, there are so many other characteristics of romantic poetry. Firstly, you should know that in romantic poetry, now I am throwing light especially on the characteristics of romantic poetry. In beginning, I have made comparison between the characteristics of neoclassical poetry and those of the romantic poetry. Now, especially, I am throwing light on the special qualities, on the special features of romantic poetry. Firstly, you should know that in romantic poetry, we find the role of imagination. Imagination plays very important role in the romantic poetry. Second thing is that in romantic poetry, we find the picture of sense of awe, AWE, sense of awe. Sense of awe means fear with respect. Fear with respect. Fear with respect means suppose that you have gone to college and you are smoking a cigarette and your teacher is coming to you and you see your teacher coming towards you, so you conceal your cigarette. You have no fear of teacher, but you have respect for your teacher, so you conceal your cigarette behind your body. This is called sense of awe, fear with respect. Another thing is that adventure. Adventure is also found in romantic poetry. Adventure means you must have heard the word adventurous work, sahasi karj, the work which is full of risk. The work which is full of risk, that is called risky work, is called adventurous work, sahasi karj. So, for example, you may say skydiving is an adventurous work. Mountaineering is also an adventurous work. Naukayan, boating is also risky, so it is also called adventurous work. So sense of awe is one of the characteristics of romantic poetry. Adventure is also one of the characteristics of romantic poetry. Now the fourth thing is mystery, sense of wonder and mystery, sense of mystery. These are also the characteristics of romantic poetry. Something is hidden, nothing is clear. And when mystery is seen by you, certainly you will wonder. You have no belief that this is possible. This is possible. But everything is possible in imagination. So wonder, sense of mystery is one of the characteristics of romantic poetry. Sense of wonder is one of the characteristics of romantic poetry. Another characteristics of romantic poetry is nature. Nature plays very important role in romantic poetry. Nature has a great impact on romantic poetry, and nature means what? God created things. I have told you that river is God created, not made man things. The opposite of natural is artificial. Artificial means what? Man made. Natural means what? God made. One which has been created not by human beings, rather by Parampita Parmeshwar. So this is called natural things, and nature plays very important role in romantic poetry. After this, the next point comes is love. Love is also part and parcel of romantic poetry. Love story is there. That is the soul of romantic poetry. Another thing is that uh, you must have read, I have told you in the beginning that a boy is called romantic boy, a girl is called romantic girl, and we take it just about love affairs between boy and a girl. That is also right, but it is one of the points, not the whole points regarding the romantic poetry. So love story is also one of the characteristics of romantic poetry. Supernaturalism, natural and supernatural. Natural is part and parcel, or nature plays very important role in the romantic poetry. After that, supernatural elements also play very important role in romantic poetry. Supernaturalism is found in romantic poetry. Supernatural is, you must understand, natural means visible to us, one which can be seen by us, that is natural. Supernatural means beyond our vision, one which cannot be seen by us through our eyes, that is called supernatural elements. Ghosts are called supernatural elements. We may see you may see me. Man, women can be seen by us, by each other, but no ghosts are seen by us. So they are called supernatural elements, supernatural things. So one which is visible to us, that is natural, one which is invisible to us, that is called supernatural. So supernaturalism also plays very important role in romantic poetry. Another characteristics of romantic poetry is love for the children, compassion for the children, sympathy for the poor, sympathy for the poor. These are also called characteristics of romantic poetry. Romantic poetry. You should know love for the children. Love has different meanings at different places. Love may be possible between mother and son. Love may be possible between brother and sister. Love may be possible between teacher and students. Love may be possible between brother and sister. Love may be possible between husband and wife. Love may be possible between lover and beloved. So love has different meanings, has different significances, different importances at different places. So love for children is also, we must be compassionate towards the children. We must show compassion for the children. So love for the children is also one of the defining characteristics of romantic poetry. Another thing is that sympathy for the poor. Actually, romantic poets were very much influenced by the French Revolution, which occurred in 1789 in France, and it was based on the theory of equality, liberty, and fraternity. So French romantic poets were very much influenced, were very much impressed by the theory of French Revolution. So it always talks of equality, it always talks of liberty, and it always talks of fraternity. If there is equality in the society, naturally there will be liberty in the society, and if there are liberty and equality in the society, naturally there would be a kind of brotherhood, a kind of oneness, a kind of friendship in the society. So, love for the children and sympathy for the poor. People must have sympathy for the common people, for the poor people. We must be compassionate towards the poor people living in the society. There should not be a gap, a kind of gap between man, and romantic poets wanted to bridge the gap between man and man, between the poor and the rich living in the society. So, sympathy for the poor is also one of the special features of romantic poetry. Now, the last point is medievalism. Medievalism means, this is very important, you must have heard the name of medieval poetry. You must have read Nun Priest's Tale. You must have read Prologue to Canterbury Tales. If some of you may have been the student of Nalanda College, and I used to teach in BA Part 1 Nun Priest's Tale or Prologue to Canterbury Tales, and during that very time I must have talked to you all regarding medievalism or medieval poetry. 18th century is known as medieval age. So medievalism is based on illiteracy. It is based on illiteracy, backwardness, superstition, religiousness, chivalry, adventure. These are the characteristics of medieval poetry. In medieval age, people were very much superstitious. People were very much illiterate. Those who are illiterate are certainly superstitious. Superstition, backwardness, illiteracy, adventure, religiousness, these are the characteristics of medieval poetry. So the 18th, 19th century writer went back to medieval age, and they started landlordism is there. So if you, especially Keats was very much influenced by medieval poetry. If you go through his poetry, whether it is Lamia or it is the Eve of St. Agnes, we find there medieval elements. Medieval elements means return to medieval age. Return to medieval age means returning to 14th century poetry, where we find backwardness, superstition. When you go through a very beautiful poem by John Keats, it is known as the Eve of St. Agnes. It was a common belief in the people of medieval age that when a virgin means unmarried girl, keeps fasting on 20th January. On the 20th January, she keeps fasting and she performs certain rituals, and she has to sleep naked on her bed looking towards the sky. In the midnight, her would-be husband will come to her in her dream. This is the superstition in the medieval age. And in that very poem, the Eve of St. Agnes, the Eve of St. Agnes, I mean, that very date is 20th January. On that very day, there is a girl, her name is what I have forgot. Her name is the hero is Porphyrio, and his beloved is Angela, is the maid servant, and Madeline. Madeline is the name of the heroine, and Porphyrio is the hero, and there is maid servant. Her name is Angela. So Madeline keeps fasting on the eve of St. Agnes, I mean on 20th century. She performs certain rituals and she takes her dress off and then starts looking and lays on the bed and starts looking towards the sky, and really her lover is an adventurous person taking risk in his life. Though there is hostility, there is enmity between the family of the hero and the family of the heroine. Still, Porphyrio reaches the house of Madeline, and he comes to the room where Madeline is sleeping. So superstitious is found there. Superstition lies where there is backwardness, illiteracy, and people are religious minded. So these are the characteristics of medieval age, and medievalism is also one of the characteristics of romantic poetry, and all these things are seen in romantic poetry. So these are the characteristics. Now I count one by one. The first characteristics of romantic poetry is imagination. Then comes sense of awe, sense of adventure, then mystery, wonder, then comes nature, then comes supernaturalism, then comes love story, then comes sympathy for the poor, love for the children, and last one is medievalism. These are the characteristics of romantic poetry. You must note down. जैसे बता रहे हैं, in that very manner, nobody will teach you, nobody will discuss threadbarely the characteristics of romantic poetry. They will tell love is there, nature is there, but that is also right, but they will not point out clearly in a threadbare manner as I am giving you and as I am throwing light on those characteristics. So after the classes, you will note down all the characteristics which are in your mind, and they are imagination, sense of awe, sense of wonder, sense of adventure, sense of mystery. Then comes nature, supernaturalism, love story, sympathy for the poor, love for the children, medievalism, landlordism. These are the superstition. These are called the characteristics of romantic poetry, and when you go through the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, then you will come to know whether these things are, how do you say that the Rime of the Ancient Mariner is a romantic poem? How do you say that S.T. Coleridge is a romantic poet? Simply you should know, if we find these romantic elements, not all, but a few we find, some of them we find in the poetry of in the poetry of S.T. Coleridge, then these romantic poets, these romantic elements will make him a romantic poet, and his poetry as a romantic poetry. So when you go through any romantic poem, the question must come into your mind, why do we call it romantic poetry? And if it is romantic poetry, it means there must be the presence of romantic elements in this poetry. And if these romantic elements are found in the poetry, that poetry will certainly be called a romantic poetry. So in the next class, we shall discuss all the romantic poets and their specialization. Wordsworth, Coleridge, Byron, Shelley, Keats, and then we shall come to the text, or we shall come to the book, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So, any question, any query? If you have, you may ask me. Otherwise, I will stop here today. Should I stop? So thanks to you all, and we
Thank you,
shall
sir.
meet a day after tomorrow. ठीक है, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. अभी रुक जाओ, एक मिनट रुक जाओ, एक मिनट। अच्छा, थैंक्स